Hello all, let's learn regarding the functional component of the cranial nerves. After the completion of this lecture, you will be able to understand what is the functional component and which are the nuclei of the cranial nerves present within the brain stem, and from which nuclei the which structure of the head and neck is going to supply, which you have already learned in the head and neck, but we are going to compile all these things and try to understand the functional component. So before going into detail of the functional component of the cranial nerves, let's review some things before starting the lecture. So this is the figure of the ventral aspect of the brainstem, and out of the 12 cranial nerves, first two cranial nerves are going to arise from the forebrain, and the remaining 10 cranial nerves they are going to derive from this brainstem. The first cranial nerve, that is the olfactory cranial nerve, and the second one, that is optic cranial nerve, they are concerned with the cerebrum, and that's why we are not going to deal these nerves right now. The third cranial nerve, that is the oculomotor nerve, which is going to arise from the midbrain at the level of the superior colliculi from somewhere here, and it is going to coming out in from the interpeduncular fossa. The fourth cranial nerve, that is the trochlear nerve, which is going to coming out from the midbrain at the level of the inferior colliculi, but from the dorsal aspect, and this is the only cranial nerve which is comes out from the brainstem of its dorsal aspect, and it is going to wrap the cerebral peduncle to come forward to supply the superior oblique muscle of the orbit. The fifth cranial nerve, we already know it is going to coming out from the ventrolateral aspect of these bones, and it is having the three divisions: ophthalmic division, maxillary division, and mandibular division. The sixth, seventh, and eighth cranial nerve, that is abducent, facial, and vestibulocochlear nerve, they are going to coming out from the pontomedullary junction from medial to lateral side like this. So this is the sixth, this one is the seventh, and this one is the eighth cranial nerve. Ninth, 10th, and the cranial part of the 11th cranial nerve, they are going to coming out from this post-olivary sulcus. So here, this is the olive of the medulla oblongata, and this one is the pyramid of the medulla oblongata. So from the post-olivary sulcus, the ninth, 10th, and the cranial part of the 11th cranial nerve is going to coming out, while the spinal part of this accessory nerve, which is going to arise from the spinal cord, and this spinal accessory nerve enters within the skull through the foramen magnum to join the cranial part of the accessory nerve to form the accessory nerve proper. And lastly, the 12th cranial nerve, which is going to arise from the pre-olivary sulcus, so between the olive and the pyramid, as 3 or 4 rootlets, and all these rootlets are going to form one single nerve, and that is the 12th cranial nerve, that is hypoglossal nerve. So all these are the origin of the cranial nerves from the brainstem. Now when we see all these 12 cranial nerves, we can functionally divide these cranial nerves into pure motor, pure sensory, and mixed nerve. The pure motor nerves include the third cranial nerve, fourth cranial nerve, sixth cranial nerve, and 12th cranial nerve, while the pure sensory cranial nerve includes the first cranial nerve, second cranial nerve, and eighth cranial nerve, while the other cranial nerves they are mixed in nature. So these include the 5, 7, 9, 10, and 11. So here we can appreciate that these pure motor nerves, these are responsible for the motor supply to the muscles only or to the glands only, while these pure sensory nerves, these are responsible for carrying the sensations and not giving the nerve supply to the muscles or the glands. And this mixed type of the nerves, they are responsible for providing the sensory supply as well as the motor supply to the different part of the body, mainly head and neck. Now, before going into detail of the functional component of cranial nerve, let's understand some words. We know the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, it is made up of neurons, and suppose this is one neuron. Within this neuron, this portion, it is the body, and all these are the dendrites, and this larger portion, that is the axon. The nuclei are nothing but they are the collection of cell body within the central nervous system at gray matter. So when we draw a schematic figure of the brain, in the cerebrum, the outer portion, it is the collection of the cell body, and the maximum cell bodies are present within this outer portion, and that's why this is called as the gray matter of the cerebrum. While the inner to the cerebrum and the inner aspect of the cerebrum having the maximum number of the axons, and because of these axons, this area of the cerebrum, it looks whitish in color, and that's why the inner aspect of this cerebrum, it is called the white matter. But reverse occur in case of the spinal cord, where the gray matter is situated within the central part, while the peripheral part, it is composed of maximum number of the axons, and that's why this is the white matter for the spinal cord. So when we take a section of a spinal cord, we can see like this. So this central part, it is made up of the cell bodies of the neurons, and that's why this portion, it is called as the gray matter of the spinal cord, while this remaining portion, this portion, it is composed of maximum number of the axons within it, and that's why it is the white matter of the spinal cord. Now when these cell bodies are present within the white matter of the cerebrum, or we can say white matter of the spinal cord, this is called as nuclei. So nuclei, it is nothing but it is the cell body situated within the white matter of the central nervous system, while the collection of the cell body outside the central nervous system, it is called as the ganglion. So here in this figure, this is the dorsal root ganglion, and which is one of the example of the ganglion, and this ganglion is nothing but it is the collection of cell body outside the central nervous system. The fibers from the cerebral cortex will arise from a single point, and it will passes down from the brainstem to ultimately reach up to the spinal cord or the other part of the brainstem, or we can say the nuclei of the cranial nerves. And these fibers, they are descending fibers, and these fibers are called as the descending tract, while some fibers will pass from the spinal cord and it reaches up to the cerebral cortex, and these fibers, they are passing upward, and that's why these tracts are called as the ascending tracts. These descending tracts are always motor in nature, while these ascending tracts are always sensory in nature. So when this descending tract, it is going to relay into the spinal cord, and from there the motor fiber will pass through the spinal nerve to reach up to the effective organ and act upon this effective organ, and at that time this fiber, it is the motor fiber, or it is called as the efferent fiber. While when any sensation from any part of the body, it will be carried by one fiber and make it to reach up to the spinal cord, and from there the ascending tract will carry this sensation to the higher center, and that's why this fiber which is carrying the sensation from the peripheral part to the central nervous system, that is called as the afferent fiber. or it is also called as sensory fiber. When we see the meaning of the somatic, the word soma, that means body wall, and if any nerve from the central nervous system is going to supply the body wall, that fibers that carries the efferent fiber to the body wall, that is called as the somatic fiber. When any fiber of the cranial nerve or spinal nerve that provide the nerve supply to the smooth muscle as well as glands of the body or any viscera of the body, that fiber it is called as the visceral fiber. The meaning of the special and the general, that is important to understand for the functional component of the cranial nerve. Now, before going into detail of the general and the special word, let's think about the sensations of our body. And sensations may be of two types, either general sensation, either special sensation. The general sensation include the sensations which can be felt by the all over the body, or we can say from all the part of the body. This general sensation includes the sensation which can be felt from all over the body, and these sensations include the pain, temperature, touch, vibration, pressure, proprioception, two-point discrimination, etc. While the spatial sensations are the sensations which can be felt with the spatial organ in the body, and these are mainly within the head and neck, and these spatial sensations are the sense of vision, sense of hearing, sense of balance, sense of taste, and sense of smell. So these five sensations are the spatial sensations. So any afferent fiber, that is the sensory fiber, there may be general afferent or there may be a special afferent fiber. And this general afferent and the special afferent fibers, they are from the any spinal nerve or from the cranial nerve. Now when we talk about the general efferent and the special efferent, the general word it is used for the all of the skeleton muscles, the glands in the body, all the smooth muscles, while the special word it used for the muscles which are derived from the branchial arches. So we can say muscles of the facial expression, muscles of the mastication, muscles of the soft palate, muscles of the pharynx, as well as the muscles of the larynx. So all these are the special muscles. Now after completion of this understanding of the words, now let's recollect something to understand more detail of the functional component. Now we know that the any cranial nerve or any spinal nerve having the fibers, and this fiber either efferent in nature, so we can say it is motor in nature, or it may be the sensory in nature, so we can say afferent in nature. And from this each efferent fiber of any cranial nerve or spinal nerve may reach up to the skeleton muscles or smooth muscle or the glands within the body, and this skeleton muscles, smooth muscles and the glands, they are present all over the body, and that's why this fiber it is called as general in nature. While this efferent fiber may reach up to the special group of muscles, these are the muscles of mastication, muscles of facial expression, muscles of the soft palate and larynx and pharynx, and these muscles they are derived from the branchial arches, and that's why we put under them as special category. And from this general efferent fibers, it may either gives the fiber to the skeleton muscles, and these include the somatic type of the fiber, and either this general efferent fiber may reach up to the smooth muscles or the glands, and that's why this fiber it is called as the visceral fiber. So we can say the fiber which is going to reach up to the skeleton muscles of the body other than derived from the brachial arches, and this fiber of the cranial nerve that carries the general somatic efferent component, while the any fiber of the cranial nerve or the spinal nerve which is going to supply the smooth muscle or the glands of the body, and this fiber of any cranial nerve or spinal nerve which carries the general visceral efferent fiber, while the any efferent component of the spinal nerve or cranial nerve which gives nerve supply to the special group of muscles. These are from the brachial arches, and when these muscles are supplied by this fiber, this particular fiber, it is named as the special visceral efferent fiber. Why this is visceral in nature? Because they are not somatic in nature, they are not present within the body wall, or we can say it is not under control of a person, because this brachial arches muscle they act as either voluntary or involuntary in nature, and that's why they are special group of visceral muscles. So the nerve fiber carrying the fibers to the brachial arch muscle, this is called as special visceral efferent group of muscles. So efferent fibers having three functional component, while when we see the afferent fibers of the any spinal nerve or cranial nerve, it may supply the general part of the body. So we can see either either the skin or the muscles, or we can say the joints or the viscera, or it may supply the special senses like the vision, nose, vision, smell, hearing, balance, as well as the taste. And so that's why we should consider them as general and the special category. This general category fiber of any cranial nerve or spinal nerve may provide the nerve supply to the skin or the joint or the somatic part of the body, and that's why this fiber that is called as somatic fiber, while the some fiber will reach up to the viscera to get the sensation, to carry the sensation from the viscera of the body, and this fiber these are called as the visceral fiber. So we can say the any fiber of the cranial nerve or the spinal nerve which provides nerve supply to the or which carry these general sensations from the body wall, that is the general somatic afferent component, while any fiber of the cranial nerve or spinal nerve which gives the sensation, which carries the general sensation from the viscera, so we can say the deeper part of the body, and these sensations may be of the dull pain in the abdomen, or it is the peristalsis sensation in the body, and this type of the sensation it is called as the general visceral afferent fiber. While when we see these special sensations of the body, they include the vision, smell, hearing, balance, and taste. Out of this all the five special sensations, this taste sensation we get from the tongue, and the mucous membrane of the tongue it is derived from the endoderm, and that's why we can see this sensation is the visceral sensation. While remaining all four special senses other than the taste of these special senses from where they arise, these are derived from the ectoderm, and all these sensations, that's why the somatic in nature. So we can say the fiber which is responsible for carrying the taste sensation, and that fiber should be called as the spatial visceral afferent fiber, while the fiber of any cranial nerve which is responsible for carrying the vision, smell, hearing or the balance sensation, and this fiber it is called as the spatial somatic afferent component. So there are 4 components of the afferent variety, and out of these 4 components, this general somatic afferent, where the fibers they are carrying the general sensation from the body wall or from the joint, and this fiber, that's why it is called as the general somatic afferent component. While the other type of the fibers, they are responsible for carrying the sensations, these are the general sensations from the viscera, and these sensations may be the dull pain in the abdomen or the peristalsis movement of the gastrointestinal tract, and these fibers they are known as the general visceral afferent type of the component. In case of the spatial sensations, we have the spatial visceral afferent component, which is actually for the taste sensation, and spatial somatic afferent component, which are mainly the vision, smell, hearing as well as the balance, because of the differentiation of the development of the mucous membrane from which these sensations are arising.